Pedro Roberto sat in his $10 million penthouse when his son did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He smiled. Not at Pedro, not at the expensive toys scattered across the marble floor, not at the therapists or the doctors or the specialists Pedro had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars hiring. He smiled at a homeless boy's dog on a street corner. Pedro didn't know it yet, but that moment would destroy his engagement, challenge everything he believed about success, and teach him what his billions never could. This is what happened next. Pedro Roberto was one of New York's wealthiest CEOs, real estate empire stretching across 3 states, private helicopters, boardroom decisions that moved markets. But none of it mattered anymore. His 8-year-old son, Ethan, hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since the car accident that killed his mother. Pedro blamed himself every single day. He'd been working late that night, closing a deal worth $20 million, while his wife drove home alone in the rain. By the time he reached the hospital, she was gone. And Ethan? The doctor said he was physically fine, but something inside him had shattered. He stopped speaking, stopped making eye contact, stopped living in the world everyone else inhabited. He existed in silence, trapped behind walls Pedro couldn't break through, no matter how much money he threw at the problem. Pedro tried everything. Child psychologists who charged $500 an hour, experimental therapies in Switzerland, art therapy, music therapy, even equine therapy at a ranch upstate. Nothing worked. Ethan remained locked away, staring at nothing, unreachable. Pedro's fiancée, Victoria, didn't help. She was elegant, polished, the kind of woman who looked perfect in magazine spreads about power couples, but she'd never wanted children. "Maybe you should accept reality," she'd said one evening, swirling wine and crystal. "Some things can't be fixed." Pedro didn't respond, but something inside him cracked a little deeper. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. Pedro was driving Ethan home from another failed therapy session. Rain streaked the windows. Traffic crawled. Ethan sat in the back seat, staring at nothing like always. Then suddenly, he sat up straight. His hand lifted. He pointed. Pedro's heart almost stopped. Ethan hadn't reacted to anything in 3 years. Pedro followed his son's gaze. A homeless boy sat on the corner, maybe 13 years old, with a cardboard sign in front of him. Next to him, a scruffy golden retriever with fur matted by rain. Before Pedro could process what was happening, Ethan opened the car door. He climbed out into the rain and walked straight toward the dog. Pedro scrambled out after him, panic flooding his chest. Ethan never approached anyone, ever, but now he was kneeling on the wet sidewalk, reaching toward the dog's head. And then it happened. Ethan smiled. The homeless boy looked up, startled. "Hey, it's okay. His name is Lucky. He won't hurt anybody." Pedro rushed over, ready to pull Ethan away, to protect him from whatever threat his mind imagined. But Ethan was laughing. Actually laughing, a sound Pedro thought he'd never hear again. The boy extended a dirty hand. "I'm Daniel." Pedro shook it, too stunned to speak. His son was petting this dog, making soft, happy sounds, smiling so wide it hurt to look at. "That's my son," Pedro finally managed. "Ethan," Daniel smiled. "He's a good kid, Lucky can tell." They stood there in the rain, Pedro watching his son experience joy for the first time in 3 years. And in that moment, Pedro made a decision that would change all their lives. "How much would it cost for you to bring this dog to my house every day?" Daniel's eyes widened. "I don't know if that's $500 every day. Just bring the dog." Daniel stared at him. $500 was more money than he usually collected in 2 weeks of sitting on street corners. "We'll be there," Daniel said quietly. That's how it started. Every afternoon at 3 o'clock, Daniel arrived at Pedro's mansion gates with Lucky. The staff tried to turn them away at first. "Sir, there's a homeless boy at the gate with a dog," the security guard said over the intercom. "Let them in," Pedro replied. "Every day from now on." Ethan waited by the window, the first time he'd shown anticipation for anything since his mother died. When Daniel and Lucky came through the door, Ethan ran to them. not walked, ran. Pedro watched from the doorway, throat tight. Over the next 3 weeks, something miraculous happened. Ethan started making sounds, then words. Quiet at first, whispered to Lucky's floppy ears. Good dog, nice dog. Then sentences. Can I throw the ball? Pedro heard his son's voice again and had to leave the room to cry where no one could see. Daniel was patient with Ethan in ways Pedro had forgotten how to be. No pressure, no expectations, just presence. They'd sit in the garden, boy and child and dog, while Lucky chased tennis balls and Ethan laughed. One evening, Pedro invited Daniel to stay for dinner. Daniel hesitated at the dining room entrance, mud still on his shoes. I should get back. My mom needs her medicine. Your mom? Daniel nodded, eyes dropping. She's sick. We lost our apartment last year after the hospital bills. I take care of her now. Pedro felt something twist in his chest. How old are you? 13? In school? Daniel looked away. Had to drop out. Can't leave her alone all day. Pedro wanted to say something, wanted to help, but Daniel called Lucky and left before the words formed. Pedro stood in his mansion, surrounded by wealth that suddenly felt meaningless, thinking about a 13-year-old boy caring for his dying mother in the streets. The next day, Victoria, Pedro's fiancée, who had seen Daniel come and go almost every day for about 3 weeks, noticed him through the window. Who is that? She asked. Pedro looked up from his laptop. A boy who brings his dog for Ethan. Victoria's expression hardened. A homeless boy? In our home, around our son. He's helping Ethan, said Pedro. Is he? Victoria snapped back and crossed her arms. Or is he helping himself to $500 a day? Pedro didn't answer. But then the seed was planted. Over the following days, Victoria's comments grew sharper. You don't know anything about this boy. He could be dangerous. He could be using you. Pedro watched Daniel play with Ethan in the garden. The boy was gentle, patient. Nothing about him seemed manipulative, but doubt crept in anyway, the way poison spreads through clear water. What if she's right? Pedro thought. What if I'm being played? If you're feeling what Pedro is feeling right now, hit that like button and leave a comment below. Let's see how many of us believe in second chances. One afternoon, Pedro asked Daniel about his mother. How sick is she? Daniel's face tightened. Cancer, stage 4. The doctors say maybe 6 months. I'm sorry. Daniel shrugged, but his eyes were wet. It's okay. At least I can take care of her. At least she's not alone. Where do you stay? Wherever we can. Sometimes the shelter on 5th. Sometimes under the bridge if the shelter's full. Pedro felt sick. And the money I'm paying you? Medicine, food, sometimes a motel room when it gets too cold. Daniel looked at Lucky. And dog food. He eats more than I do. Pedro wanted to help. Wanted to offer more. But Victoria's voice echoed in his mind. He's playing you. The sick mother story. The humble act. It's too perfect. That night, Victoria pressed harder. You realize he's probably lying about all of it, right? The sick mother, the noble struggle. Street kids learn how to manipulate wealthy people. It's survival. You don't know that. Neither do you. That's my point. Victoria leaned close. What if Ethan gets attached and this boy disappears with your money? What if he's dangerous? What if something happens to Ethan? Pedro's jaw clenched. Nothing's going to happen. You can't guarantee that. You're letting a stranger into our home because you're desperate. I understand that. But desperation makes people stupid. The next morning, Pedro hired a private investigator. I need everything on Daniel Rodriguez. Where he really lives. If his mother exists. Everything. The investigator raised an eyebrow. Thinking he's running a con? Just find out. 3 days later, the report arrived. Pedro read it alone in his office. Daniel Rodriguez, age 13. Mother, Lillian Rodriguez, terminal cancer patient at County General Hospital. No father listed. No criminal record. No history of fraud or theft. The investigator included hospital records. Lillian Rodriguez admitted 14 times in the past 18 months. Bills partially paid in cash, small amounts, clearly scraped together over time. The investigator's note at the bottom read, "Kid checks out. He's been taking care of his dying mother alone for over a year. The $500 from you is the first stable income they've had. Whatever you're paying him for, he's not scamming you." Pedro should have felt relief. Instead, he felt Victoria's breath on his neck. So, he is smart. Smart enough to create a believable cover story. Smart enough to plant evidence. Evidence? These are hospital records, which anyone can access if they know the right people. Pedro threw the report down. "Why are you so determined to believe the worst?" "Because you're not thinking clearly. Because Ethan is vulnerable. Because I'm trying to protect this family." "This family?" Pedro's voice rose. "You've never wanted Ethan. You've made that clear from day one." Victoria's face went cold. "I never said I didn't want him. I said I didn't sign up to raise a broken child who will never be normal." The words hung in the air like poison. Pedro stared at the woman he'd planned to marry and realized he didn't recognize her, or maybe he finally saw her clearly for the first time. That afternoon, when Daniel arrived with Lucky, Pedro was waiting outside. "We need to talk." Daniel's smile faded. "Is Ethan okay?" "Ethan's fine, but this arrangement," Pedro gestured between them, "it needs to stop." Daniel's face went pale. "Did I do something wrong?" "I don't know. Or did you?" "What?" "Your sick mother. The perfect timing. The dog that magically makes my son happy." Pedro's voice was harder than he intended. "It's convenient. Too convenient." Daniel stepped back like he'd been slapped. "You think I'm lying? About my mom? About everything?" "I think you're a smart kid who knows how to survive, and I think $500 a day is a lot of motivation." Tears filled Daniel's eyes. "I never lied to you. Not once." "Then prove it." "Where does your mother live? What hospital?" Daniel's voice shook. "County General, room 314. You can call them right now." Pedro pulled out his phone. He didn't call. He just held it, watching Daniel's face crumble. "Here." Pedro held out an envelope. $10,000. "Take it. Don't come back." Daniel stared at the money like it was a snake. "Mr. Roberto, please. Ethan needs—" "I said don't come back." Daniel's hands trembled as he took the envelope. He didn't open it, didn't count it, just held it like it was burning his fingers. "I thought you were different," Daniel whispered. "I thought you actually cared about Ethan, about what he needed." "I do care. That's why I'm protecting him." "From what? From someone who actually made him happy?" Daniel's voice cracked. "You're not protecting him. You're just scared. Scared that maybe a homeless kid with a dog could do what all your money couldn't." Pedro's chest tightened, but he didn't respond. Daniel called Lucky. The dog looked confused, glancing between Daniel and the house where Ethan waited. "Come on, boy. We're not wanted here." They walked away. Daniel didn't look back. Pedro watched them disappear down the long driveway, telling himself he'd done the right thing, telling himself he'd protected his son. But the envelope in Daniel's hand felt like a weight around Pedro's neck, dragging him down into water he couldn't escape. That night, Ethan waited by the window. When Daniel didn't come, he began rocking back and forth, a sign of distress Pedro hadn't seen in weeks. "Buddy, Daniel's not coming today." Ethan didn't respond. He just stared out the window, waiting for a boy and a dog who would never return. The next morning, Ethan stopped speaking again. Completely. He wouldn't eat breakfast, wouldn't look at Pedro, just sat by the window, rocking, silent. Pedro tried to explain, tried to justify his decision, but every word felt hollow. Victoria tried to comfort him. "He'll adjust. Give it time." But Pedro couldn't shake the look in Daniel's eyes. That wasn't the look of someone caught in a lie. That was the look of someone genuinely betrayed. 3 days passed. Ethan grew worse. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating entirely. The light that had returned to his eyes was gone, replaced by the same empty stare Pedro had seen for 3 years. Pedro couldn't take it anymore. He called the private investigator. "I need you to check on Daniel Rodriguez again. Make sure he's okay." "Already did," the investigator said. "You're not going to like what I found." Pedro's stomach dropped. "What?" "His mother died 2 days ago. Lillian Rodriguez passed at County General. Daniel was there when it happened." The phone nearly slipped from Pedro's hand. "And Daniel?" "Child Services took him. He's at the Hamilton Street Youth Shelter waiting for foster placement. They're taking the dog tomorrow. No dogs allowed in group homes." Pedro felt like the floor had collapsed beneath him. Lillian had died while Daniel was at Pedro's house, getting accused and thrown out. Daniel had lost his mother and been called a liar on the same day. Where is he now? Hamilton Street Shelter. But sir, he doesn't want visitors, especially not from you. Pedro didn't care. He grabbed his car keys and drove out immediately. The shelter director was a tired woman with kind eyes. "You want to see Daniel Rodriguez?" "Yes." "Are you family?" "No. But I need to see him. Please. I made a terrible mistake and I need to make it right." She studied him for a long moment. 5 minutes. He's in the rec room. Daniel sat alone on a worn couch, staring at nothing. Lucky lay at his feet, the dog's head resting on Daniel's shoe. When Daniel saw Pedro, his face hardened. "What do you want?" Pedro sat down across from him. Every word felt like swallowing glass. "I'm sorry." But Daniel said nothing. "I was wrong. About everything. I let someone poison my thinking. I accused you of things you never did." Pedro's voice cracked. "And I'm so sorry about your mother." Daniel's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't let them fall. "She died, thinking I abandoned her. I was at your house, getting kicked out when the hospital called. By the time I got there, she was already gone." Pedro felt like someone had reached into his chest and crushed his heart. "I would give anything to take that back, to give you those last moments with her." "You can't." "I know." They sat in heavy silence. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Why are you here?" Pedro took a shaky breath. "Because Ethan needs you. And because I think maybe you need us too." Daniel's expression didn't change. "Child Services is placing me in foster care next week, and they're taking Lucky tomorrow morning. No dogs in group homes." "What if there was another option?" Daniel looked up. "What if you came to live with us? You and Lucky. Permanently?" Daniel's eyes widened. "You mean like adoption?" "If you'll let me try to be your father. I know I don't deserve it after what I did. I know I failed you when you needed someone most. But I want to try. I want to be better. For you, for Ethan, for the family we could be." Daniel's wall cracked. A tear escaped down his cheek. "What about your fiancée?" Pedro pulled off his engagement ring and set it on the table between them. "I ended that yesterday. She was never right for us anyway." "Us?" "You, me, Ethan. That's my family now, if you want it to be." Daniel looked at Lucky, then back at Pedro. For the first time since his mother died, something like hope appeared in his eyes. "Yeah," he whispered. "I want that." 6 months later, Daniel Rodriguez Roberto unpacked the last box in his new bedroom. It was bigger than anywhere he'd ever lived, but that wasn't what mattered. What mattered were the photos on his desk. Him and Ethan at the beach. Him and Pedro at his first real birthday party. Lucky sleeping across the foot of his bed. Family photos. Downstairs, Ethan laughed in the garden, throwing a ball for Lucky. The sound filled the entire house, a sound Pedro never took for granted anymore. Pedro stood at the kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching his sons play. He'd cut his work hours in half, started coaching Ethan's soccer team, attended every one of Daniel's school events. He'd learned what his billions never taught him, that presence was worth more than presents, that love wasn't something you bought. It was something you built, day by day, choice by choice. One evening, Daniel found Pedro in his office, looking at a photo of his late wife. "You miss her?" "Every day," Pedro admitted. "I spent so much time trying to fill the hole she left with money, with things, with work. I almost lost Ethan completely." "But you didn't," Pedro smiled, "because a homeless boy and his dog showed me what really mattered." Daniel sat beside him. "I wasn't homeless because I wanted to be. I was homeless because life got hard and I didn't have anyone. You have someone now. You have us." Daniel nodded. "And you have me." They sat together in comfortable silence, a father and son connected not by blood but by something stronger. Choice, love, second chances. Pedro Roberto had started with everything money could buy, but he'd been poor in the ways that mattered most. A 13-year-old boy taught him that wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts. It was measured in the people who stayed when things got hard, in dogs who loved unconditionally, in sons who smiled again, in families built from broken pieces. Pedro looked out at Daniel and Ethan playing with Lucky in the fading sunlight, and he realized something. He'd finally become rich. Pedro learned that the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the people who matter. If this story moved you, consider subscribing to Fortune Rise Stories. Every week, we share real stories of people who turn pain into power, struggle into success, and heartbreak into hope. Because your story isn't over. It's just beginning. And if you want to see more stories like Pedro and Daniel's, drop a comment below. Let us know what inspired you most.